What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today what I want to talk about is, since fish are getting shallow, it is becoming our favorite time of the year. It is becoming topwater season. So what I want to talk about is a few of the topwaters that I keep in the boat and the specific situations that they're going to play for you guys. So stick around, you guys are not going to want to miss this video. It's going to be one of the best bites of the entire year. So like I said, bass are coming shallow, water temps are coming up. It is 82 degrees here right now, which means they will finally eat topwaters again, right? As those fish are all getting shallow, it is gonna be one of the best times of the year to catch those fish on topwater moving baits. But what I wanna start out doing is I wanna talk about the topwaters that I'm specifically gonna carry, and I'm gonna break it up into two categories. We're gonna talk about moving topwaters, and then we're gonna talk about slow moving topwaters and how I go about using each one of them. So when it comes to moving topwaters, I'm a fairly simple guy. I don't like to throw a bunch of them, and I don't like to keep a lot of them with me. So I'm gonna keep a spook, because that's one of the best go-to moving topwaters out there on the market. This is a 6th Sense Dogma. I keep a Dogma and a Catwalk, and then I like a Buzzbait and a Whopper Plopper. Those are gonna be my moving topwater baits, and I really don't stray outside of that. Because of the size of the bites topwater baits are known to get, I really don't like to stray and drive myself crazy, because all you're trying to do is get a few different sound profiles to cover that water, and then you got it. Once you got it, you got it. And the colors that I like to keep with, whether they're a moving topwater or a non-moving topwater, a slow moving topwater, it's gonna be white and black. That's pretty much it. When it comes to spooks, I will have a natural color mixed in too. But you gotta remember, they're only getting the bottom view of all of these topwater baits, and so you either wanna have a light profile or a dark profile. But let's talk about the moving topwaters. So you'll see I have a Whopper Plopper, a Buzzbait, and a Spook. A Spook is probably my favorite clear water bait, because a spook, I can move it really, really fast and give those fish not a lot of time to look at it. You know, especially if they're keying in on bait fish, I can really just get that bait to walk. And it's a specific action, right? Doesn't have as much sound as some of these other moving baits. And so if I have calmer conditions where it's a little bit sunnier, slicker, you know, clean water, and they're gonna get a good look at it, that's when I'm gonna go to a topwater. If I am fishing in conditions where that water is a little bit dirtier, I have more chop on the water, I have lower visibility, that Whopper Plopper is amazing. You know, that's just one of those bites that when Larry Dahlberg invented this bait, he knew what he was doing. It catches giant fish, and you can cover a lot of water really, really fast. The Buzzbait I like when I'm fishing around grass. For me, if I'm fishing around grass, if I'm fishing around any kind of woody cover, that's when I like to go to a Buzzbait, because it's just gonna go through that cover a lot better. And a Buzzbait is one of those baits that I get a really, really good hookup ratio with. And so if I'm fishing really, really dirt shallow, that Buzzbait to me, man, is just a great way to catch some giant fish and keep my bait clean as I'm trying to fish it, right? Because every other bait has treble hooks on it, is gonna catch everything out there. If I'm fishing around other cover, I wanna be able to get through as easily as possible to catch as many fish as possible. One of the hacks that I will show you with the Buzzbait is when they come out of the package, you can see that this blade has a lot of play, and that can kind of hinder it when a fish comes up to get it. Now, Booyah, when they made this one, this is actually a custom bait, when they come up to get it, you can see they have a lot of room right here. But if your Buzzbait that you like to throw has a less gap than this, what you can do is slide this forward, slide this rivet forward, cut your wire, and then rebend it. Slide that rivet all the way up to here, and then rebend it to shorten that gap, which is gonna give you a better hookup percentage. So if you're missing fish on a Buzzbait, that's probably why, and that's a tip that you can use to also increase that a little bit. To get the Buzzbaits to have that nice squelching sound too, you can see they've actually crimped this right here. But if your little peg right here is not crimped, crimp this end to keep it from moving. You don't want that turning. You want it to be stationary, so that way it's having constant contact with the blade, and that will give it a squelchier sound if that's what you're into. So let's talk about the two baits that I use that are slower moving topwaters. You have a popper, and you have a frog, right? And you have a pointed nose frog, and then you have a popping style frog. So pointed nose frog, I like to use when I'm fishing around grassy vegetation, whether I'm fishing in grass edge, whether I'm fishing along cattails. If I'm trying to just go over top of those fish, that's when I like that. If I'm trying to call those fish out of something, if I'm fishing around lily pads, if I'm fishing around really, really thick cover, I'll go to a popping frog. If I'm fishing along bushes, or I'm fishing over top of brush piles where I want to slow that bait down, that's when I'm gonna go to that popper, because I can move it a lot slower. You know, if I think those fish are seated on a stump underneath the water and I wanna call them up, that's when I'm gonna go to that popper. Now, these are the baits that I like to go to when I'm closer to the spawn. When I know those fish are really on beds, or really, really thinking about being on beds, That's when I like these baits, because you get more time over top of those fish's heads where they're gonna get more irritated and they're gonna come up and actually eat it. When you are more in the pre and post spawn, that's when I like to go to the moving style baits, because that's when I know fish are really feeding, they're moving around, they're not specifically locked onto a piece of cover, and I wanna cover water. I might also use these baits if I literally just don't know where those fish are at. Because if those fish are on beds, you might get them to blow up on one of these baits, but have a popper as a follow-up bait to throw in there to get them to eat it, you know, if they're on a specific piece of cover. You know, if I throw a spook out there and I get one to blow up on it and it misses it, I'm gonna have a follow-up bait, whether it's a popper or whether it's a fluke, something that I can throw back in there and potentially trigger those fish. But if you don't know where to start on your body of water, start with the moving baits. I will say, the more loud and the more high riding these baits sit, the more those fish that are on beds are gonna eat it. A spook, that whopper plopper, those are gonna be your baits that those fish are really gonna come up and eat a little bit more or swat at a little bit more. A buzzbait tends to move a little bit too fast, and so they don't necessarily swat at it as much. I will say my favorite hookup ratio is with a buzzbait, but that's gonna be one that I'm gonna use when those fish are really post-spawn and they're really just feeding, and I'm trying to cover water to figure out where those active fish are at. One thing that I want to talk about is braided line is going to be your friend when you are throwing any of these specific topwater baits, even a popper. What I like to do is I like to go to a softer rod but straight braid, because that braid is going to float, have zero stretch, and it's going to give me a direct contact to those fish. Guys used to use monofilament because it had a lot of stretch because they found themselves losing topwater fish, but that's just because they had garbage rods back in the day. Today, with arc rods and every rod company's technology, you can get a lot softer rods and get away with it, and I just like having that braid because it floats and I know I'm gonna have a direct connection to those fish in order to get them in the boat. If you feel like you still want a little bit of cushion on there, or you're fishing spooks in really, really clean water, you can put a leader onto your braid, but most of the time I go with straight braid, because if they're willing to come up and blow up on a bait like that or eat a topwater bait, they really don't care about the 6 feet of string that's in front of that bait. You know, they're really keying in on that bait specifically. As far as all the combos goes for these baits, I will have them linked down below, so that way you guys know what rods go with what baits. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video and you want to learn a little bit more about it, hit that subscribe button to follow on with the channel. But thank you guys so much for watching. God bless, and I hope to see you guys in the next video.